Yes, yes, yes. Welcome to Bite Size B2B Marketing, where our aim is to give B2B companies easy to digest tips to help improve their marketing efforts. I am joined by the most special of special guests today and top of the podcast pyramid. Sorry, got so excited I stumbled my words. The one and only Rand Fishkin. Rand is SparkToro's co-founder and CEO. SparkToro is an audience research tool that shows the websites your customers visit, social accounts they follow, hashtags they use, and more, so you can do marketing that works. And Rand founded Moz, a blog turned consultancy turned software company that was a major player back in 2013 when I was a wee naive lad starting out in SEO. Although Rand doesn't have any connection to the company now, back then I consumed every piece of content they put out, and Rand's approach to marketing and just SEO in general stood out to me and made its mark. So it's my great pleasure to have him on the podcast today. Rand, how is it going?
Yeah, good, Steve. Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. Today is going to be kind of a bit of a wide-reaching conversation covering a few different topics. But to kick things off, you had some great success with Moz and now SparkToro is growing nicely as well. What's been the difference in the approaches between scaling the two companies?
Yeah. I mean, these are two extremely different companies, Steve. So
Yeah.
Moz was a venture-backed software company, raised I think a little over $30 million. I built a team of 150 people. I think it scaled all the way up to 200 after I left and had multiple acquisitions and did, a ton of growth, had different offices. The team was almost entirely in person in Seattle. And then after the stat acquisition in Vancouver as well, we had a Portland office for a while. So, big kind of old school software company in these sorts of ways. SparkToro is completely different. So Casey and I had both worked at, venture-backed companies, some that had medium success or mediocre success like Moz. Casey had been at HubSpot, which of course had done phenomenally well, and also at independent software companies like Wistia, where, the founders initially raised around, but then sort of went private and did their own indie thing. And we really wanted a company that was incredibly tiny, had almost no management overhead, was remote first. This is even before the pandemic, and was not built to scale. It was built to create a great product that its customers loved and serve them well and hopefully be profitable and stick around for a long time, instead of being a sort of, how do we take tens of millions of dollars and then flip that into $1 billion or bust story. And as a result, SparkToro is funded differently. It's set up differently. There's only 3 of us. It's a tiny little team. It's just myself, Casey, and Amanda. Yeah. We all work from home. Casey and I are in the Seattle area. Amanda's down in California, but it works great.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. I just had assumed from sort of the marketing that was put out and just kind of following along with you guys on LinkedIn, you and Amanda especially, I was like, oh yeah, it must be a large team. Hence my sort of next question, which was, it'd be good to get a setup of an idea of the setup of the structure of the marketing team. If it's just sort of Amanda leading the charge on that, really, I suppose. Amanda. And so,
and we're very, I think. This is someone asked me, my wife and I are investors in a few, portfolios of startup companies and that kind of stuff and funds. And someone asked like, hey, can you talk about setting up a successful remote first team and how to build structure and organization? And I was like, I cannot. I really cannot. It's not that I don't want to help. I do. I mean, I love helping folks out along with stuff like that. But SparkToro has almost no structure whatsoever. We sort of email each other and are like, hey, I'm going to work on this. What are you working on? Or are you working on something? Some weeks we do 20 hours of work. Some we do 40. I don't know. I guess occasionally Casey or I will have like a 50-hour week. But most of the time we try and aim for French working hours or better, which I think the French are like 32 hours a week. So we're aiming to do that. Our goal is to keep SparkToro a chill work environment where essentially we can do work that is the most meaningful with virtually no overhead. So almost no meetings. We don't really take a lot of calls. If someone emails us and says, hey, before I sign up, I'm going to need a walkthrough. You need to demo it for me. Or, hey, I'm going to, whatever. We're a big Fortune 500. We need to do invoice billing and you've got to jump through this these hoops of regulations or whatever, and we're like, sorry, you're probably not a good customer for us.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
just, we just don't do it. SparkToro is very self-explanatory. So our goal is to make this product something where you can just go to it and use it like you would use Google or Netflix, right? Anybody can figure it out. You just start searching and you're like, oh, these results are really useful for me. I need this in my marketing. Great. I'm going to sign up for it and use the free version, or I'm going to sign up for a paid version or whatever. It's fantastic. We are not sticklers about trying to get people to stick around every month and like, how do we extend, a customer lifetime? If you don't need SparkToro this month, cancel. If you need us again next month, join back up again. So it's just a very unique and different way of thinking about running a business. It is not, I think, typical in the startup world, but it's a really beautiful way of running a business too. Like it just, it doesn't have the high intensity burnout, stress, madness that so much of the first 20 years of my career had.
There's I'm not sure if you've read it, but it's called Reinventing Organizations. I believe it's by Frederick, I always butcher his last name, Lelou, but essentially in that he calls them like teal organizations, and it's these kind of interconnected organizations that seem to, from the outside, how do they even run? But there's just a way of working together within these organizations that they know they're trusted. Some of the companies, they choose their own pay, and then they check that against everyone in the company, and they're like, okay, look, is this fair? And it's, we believe that person should get it. And it's just no one's checking in on hours and things like this. And I think that's, I think that kind of sounds similar to what you're describing there. And it's always been something appealing to me as well with companies where it's that kind of setup. You're trusted, and and it's kind of, you get the most out of people that way as well, don't you?
Just don't. I don't want to be a manager, right? A people manager. I don't want to, hey, Steve, what are you doing this week? And is that the most valuable thing you could be doing? And, should we be talking about that thing you delivered last week? Get out of here. I don't know. I just don't want to pretend I'm in high school anymore and I have to watch people and, do sort of surveillance on my team. None of that stuff. Casey, I trust you to be doing the best things that you can be doing. And let's communicate about what's on the table and what you could be doing and what I should be doing and what Amanda should be doing. Very frankly, we don't adhere to or ascribe to a particular structural set. If we got to 20 people, I don't think that model would work. If we got to 50, there's no way it would work, right? And if we're back at a couple hundred or larger than that, you need lots of these systems. But I don't want to operate a company like that. And what I'd love to see happen, Steve, right? What I'm trying to change in the world is idea that the goal for every entrepreneur, especially every tech entrepreneur, should be, how do I build a huge billion-dollar company? I don't think that should be very many people's goal. Almost everyone who tries to do it fails. So if you take 10,000 people who say they're an entrepreneur trying to raise venture capital, trying to build a billion-dollar company, you are unlikely to have one or two successes out of that 10,000 group of people. But I think if you were to take those 10,000 people and say, hey, do you think you could build a small to medium-sized business sort of in this SparkToro mindset with, an indie structure and indie funding, keep it small, keep it profitable, and then see where your growth path takes you and what kind of products you can build and whether the market's excited about them, I bet you would have 5,000 successes. That's my goal. I want a higher success rate. And to do that, you can change the criteria for what success means instead of trying to get everyone to pursue, sort of the venture capitalist stream.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's every time you always get it on the podcast, how I built this and other things like that, where it's suddenly they either get invested in or bought out and then they don't enjoy it as much anymore. It just always seems to be the same story. And I've felt that from your book as well. Not that it will probably get to that situation, but if it ever did, I would be like, just not something that's what I want to chase.
Yeah, I mean, even the biggest success stories in startup world, I think the best thing that you could say about them is they made some very rich people even more money. Right? Like that's what Amazon did. That's what Google did. That's what Facebook did. Even Microsoft, right? Like they made very wealthy people, right? Mark Zuckerberg's family was very wealthy. Bill Gates's family was like old money from Seattle.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos had lots of money before Amazon. And yes, it made those people and everyone who invested in them, who were also millionaires and billionaires, much richer.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know. I mean, Amazon delivers fast. I like that.
Yeah. It's true.
It's quite right. The convenience is good, but
I think that's the only thing that keeps you around, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, I look at an Uber or a WeWork or a Theranos or you name 500 other big name startups, and you can point to a few where you're like, yeah, I think that's an unambiguously good product and company, right? Maybe a HubSpot. HubSpot's a good example of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Built a billion-dollar company, pretty unambiguously good. Would I trade it for 500 small businesses that serve all of those customers in their little ways? Yeah, I probably would. I think that's healthier for the economy. I'd rather see that wealth spread around. I'd rather see lots and lots of companies versus one big one. One big one is just a lot of risk. Anything goes wrong and, thousands of people are out of jobs. And, this happened in Seattle, right? As Amazon started doing its first like really big layoffs, there's like big sections of downtown Seattle that are kind of empty now. And you see this, mass exodus, and it happened with Boeing in the 70s, right? Boeing was this huge employer in Seattle. And there was a famous billboard in Seattle that everybody who was around at the time cites. The billboard said, "Will the last person out of Seattle please turn the lights out?" Because the population had grown to 700,000 or so, and then went all the way down to 480,000 in the late 70s. And so relying on big companies, I don't like it for any reason. I'd much rather have lots of little ones. I'd much rather be a little one.
Yeah, I agree with that. So nice. Quite top level. In terms of the marketing strategy at SparkToro, what does that look like? Could you talk me through that?
Yeah, our big goal is essentially, we don't think like a, tiny, unsophisticated company. We've got a ton of marketing experience. Obviously, Amanda, has done extraordinary work in her career, and I've had a lot of marketing success in mine. So has Casey. And so we really do think about this as trying to build a flywheel. So basically, what are activities that we can invest in that over time will scale with decreasing friction? Meaning we have to put in less effort to get the same or more marketing value out of them. So, going on other people's podcasts, writing content, doing social media posting, joining other people's YouTube channels. We do a lot of, PR and press contribution stuff. We try and produce some interesting reports that people will cite. We have done a lot of conferences and events, those kinds of things. And all of them with the goal of essentially getting the SparkToro name out there and building that brand association. So our target market is marketers, usually people who work at an agency or they're consultants or they're in-house as a data analyst or an ad manager or a content marketing manager or social media manager, that kind of thing. Those people are the people we want to reach. And what we're trying to reach them with is our brand and the problem that we solve. And I think this should be true for virtually every company, right? You have some ideal customer profile. You know that they spend time in certain places, that they pay attention to certain channels, people, sources of influence, publications, events. And so your job generally should be to get in front of those places, right? If everybody in my target audience pays attention to bite-sized B2B marketing podcast, well, geez, I should really reach out to Steve and see if we can do an episode together. Or maybe I can sponsor the podcast, or maybe we can do a co-marketing thing, or maybe you come speak at the next Spark Together event, or, whatever it is, we work together, we find some way to get in front of your audience and provide value to them so that hopefully they go to SparkToro and they're like, oh, let me see what this is. Let me type in, my ideal customer profile and do some searches and try the free version and be like, oh, okay, now I understand what it does. If I ever have the problem that SparkToro solves, this is where I'm going to come to solve it.
Yeah.
That's our goal, right? We want to build that flywheel.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Elf or someone else who wrote the post where it was like the barnacle SEO, where it was looking down the SERPs and seeing the big players who are ranking for certain things, or the listicles, and getting, say, featured on, riding on the back of their audience as such, or on their authority. And I feel with that as well, it's definitely yeah, being able to just see where those audiences kind of overlap is definitely a key area where
So funny.
if you can get in front of
It's
them.
so funny to think about, right? Because I think I did a Whiteboard Friday many years ago at Moz
Mm,
on the Barnacle SEO thing. I don't think I came up with the name. I think somebody else did,
yeah,
but I filmed a video that sort of popularized it. And it's ridiculous to think about now, right? Thinking about marketing through this lens of SEO, which is
yeah,
so, you're a carpenter with a hammer and every problem is a nail and you can't think outside your own box, right? And so
yeah, yeah,
what of course never occurred to me, the SEO, Rand the SEO, was, wait, why do I just need to be in search results? Like for every one person who searches Google for this problem, there's 10 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 people who did not search for that keyword, but could
yeah,
probably use the product that your solution solves. Just, oh my God. And, being just so single-minded and I don't know, tunnel vision about SEO. Everything must be search. Jeez,
yeah.
Rand. It's embarrassing.
Do you feel like it was because it was, I don't know, yeah, I suppose it was more because of the championing Moz, I suppose, wasn't it? At the start of my career, it was also, yeah, similar thing where it's like very narrowly kind of focused on SEO and then suddenly realizing, okay, well, first of all, it all interconnects. And then secondly, it's just, as you said, there's no point like trying to squeeze everyone through the same, put everyone through the same hoop that's kind of coming to you for a problem. It's like sometimes you just can't help them, for example.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, Steve, I think if I look behind you, I think I see a poster for, is that Heinz?
it's this little ketchup bottle, and but it's a knockoff of Heinz bottle. But he's saying, always believe in your sauce.
Always believe in your sauce. So fascinating example there, right? I like this one a bunch because if I try and imagine, Steve, putting on my SEO hat and then being like, oh, well, how would I help whatever Heinz tomato ketchup or any ketchup brand, like a startup ketchup brand, right, that wants to compete with Heinz? What in the frickin' world am I going to rank for that's going to sell more bottles of ketchup?
Exactly.
I cannot think of a single Google keyword where if I was sitting down with the CMO from Heinz, I'd be like, well, obviously you just need to rank for more keywords.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has that obviousness about it that when you start applying it to more and more problems, when you try and see things through the lens of SEO or just search in general, you realize what a narrow channel it is. And yes, Google gets billions of searches every day. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But I bet all of the billions of searches that Google gets that could help sell ketchup, I bet the most important one is Heinz.
Yeah.
Like it is the brand name. And they did not get that because they did a good job at SEO. They did it because they got in front of people for 80, 100 years now.
Yeah.
And told them that Heinz was a great product and they made that formula consistent and they made it something that people liked and they did a good job of distributing it to restaurants, which are sort of the sources of influence in the mass market consumer world. And they made sure that they owned the supermarket shelving, right? They did pricing and packaging and positioning, all of these things right. And so they don't have to give a red cent about search. Like they don't care. And this is true for so many companies that just ignore all these other things and are like, SEO, how do I rank for this keyword?
Yeah. Some companies, even some products, it's just not suited for, is it? And especially the Heinz instance, you're never searching, you'd be at the supermarket eyeing up different ketchups, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be looking on Google for best ketchup 2023.
Yeah.
So
best ketchup 2023. Also, I mean, this is another great point, which is, let's say you are in a space that is, a wonderful place to compete in for SEO, right? Like search is just awesome for you. Maybe you are selling digital cameras, right? And so people do go to Google and search for what's the best digital camera reviews, all that kind of stuff. And if you are selling one particular camera, is the best thing that you could do to rank for all of these keywords around best digital camera? Probably not. If I search for best digital cameras and then I see, some Sony camera or some Panasonic camera on Panasonic's website ranking there, that is very uncompelling. I'm not going to click that. That's just one vendor who clearly is self-interested trying to sell themselves. Useless. What I would instead try and do is PR,
Yeah.
right? How do I get all the people who do camera reviews, all of the influencers on Instagram and on TikTok and on Instagram Reels and on YouTube in particular, probably bigger than most, and on LinkedIn, right? And I would try and say, how do I get them to feature my camera and review it and give it a good review? And how do I look at the things that they care about and make sure that that's what's in my product and that I position it that way and I market it that way and I get on all their radars? That is probably going to be far more valuable than trying to rank for best cameras 2023. And so I
Yeah.
think this mindset, that I had 10 years ago, that many folks in digital marketing had 10 years ago, of how do I rank number one for keyword,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a really bad one.
Yeah, agree. I think it's even just a case of, rather than it being search engine optimization, just dropping the engine part and just having search optimization. Like, how can you be in all of the places where the customer is searching, be that on TikTok, just browsing through, looking, if it's more of kind of like a B2C product, I suppose, like going on there and actually typing in like best camera or typing in cameras, or even just, as you said, as you're on Instagram and you're seeing your favorite photographer and they've been given this camera and they're filming with it and you're like, oh, okay, like they use that, it must be good. So yes, and I think it's something definitely that B2B companies have not gotten as wise to, I suppose. Even the whole kind of influencer marketing aspect of things as well, it seems to be a bit of a step behind B2C companies that have been doing this for a while. Like B2B companies are a bit don't tend to be doing it as much, I suppose, which is, I feel something that they're potentially missing out on. And in terms of, are there any sort of channels or tactics that you've been trying that haven't worked as expected?
We have been featured a few times on some, I don't know what not viral, but very popular TikTok videos.
Yeah.
Right? So someone will do a little mini review of SparkToro and they'll show their screen, they'll show themselves searching SparkToro and they'll be like, wow, look at this amazing data, whatever. And to be frank, whenever that happens, I think it's happened 2 or 3 times now where we've had a video that somebody did about SparkToro that got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of views and engagement on TikTok. And it sends very low quality traffic to us.
Okay.
Like almost like a weird DDoS. It's obviously not a DDoS, but it has those types of quality. So people sign up with fake email addresses and they don't know how to search the system. They don't really understand what SparkToro does. It just feels like it's very clearly not our audience. And that could be because it's not a sort of marketing sophisticated audience, or because many of the people who follow or see these videos are not actually trying to do marketing for a business. They're sort of, individual TikTok creators who are trying to get more TikTok followers, and they think maybe SparkToro can help them somehow. But in any case, it's a good example of even doing very well, right? Getting lots of visibility in the wrong place and in front of the wrong audience has a non-material impact, or a negative impact in our case, right? We had to put sign-up restrictions and flows in a couple of these cases and being like, oh my God, we got to wait for this TikTok thing to die down because we're just getting, everybody would sign up with fu@gmail.com. It's ridiculous
Classic
stuff. Yeah. And so anyway, that would be a good example of something that has not worked well for us. I also think we've done a little bit of maybe trying to go further afield to broader sources of influence. So for example, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have written about SparkToro a few times and cited our work. And we had some, kind of big viral pieces, and they feel really good. Like, it's very cool to see yourself in the New York Times, but the impact is non-existent, right? It just doesn't matter at all. I don't even think, some folks would say, oh, but then you can put on your homepage, as seen in the New York Times or as quoted by the Wall Street Journal, or whatever it is. I don't think that helps either. I don't think that's the kind of social proof that our customers care about. I think they'd much rather say, oh, like, cool, Steve from Bite Size B2B Marketing said SparkToro is a tool you should check out. I'm going to listen to Steve because he, like me, understands digital marketing, and I get that he's a similar person trying to accomplish similar tasks, as opposed to, why do I care that the New York Times is writing about SparkToro's study around search results, whatever it is. I think that relevance and the relevant audience is our entire goal. And this is this is core to SparkToro's philosophy, which is our whole product is about like you search for your audience and then we'll tell you what they pay attention to and who and where and how. And frankly, the best marketing we've ever done is always that. It's getting in front of the right types of customers in the places they already pay attention, from people they listen to and trust and know, and having those people say, I got lots of value from this product. You should try it too. That I think is the key to a ton of both B2B and B2C marketing success, especially if you're a small or medium business.
The best leads we ever get through as an agency are always the referrals or the word of mouth. So those ones, and it just makes sense in any company. The first thing I'll do is a couple of Slack channels I'm on if I'm looking for a certain tool or looking for a certain agency to work with or anything who can help us out. You go to those trusted kind of communities and you just want to be front and center when someone is recommending you. So
yeah, I got an email this morning that someone had recommended us on a Slack channel for a bunch of marketers, and yeah, it was great, right? It was like, oh, that's exactly the most relevant kind of thing that we could possibly be doing. And we're not doing it, right? Like it was Maria Delano who wrote this series of guides about SparkToro, why she loves it. And she posted it on social media, on her Mastodon and LinkedIn. And so of course, Amanda and I reshared it, and we had the SparkToro account reshared, and now it's making its way around these like private Slack communities and private Facebook groups, and fantastic, right? That's the kind of thing we should be encouraging. I bet that performed better for us than ranking for any keyword in Google possibly could.
Yeah, 100%. You can't fake it. Even if you did find someone who would be willing to accept, say, a large amount of money to, say, write a review about a bad product, for example, they would then slowly lose their trust in the spheres, because people would then be like, well, hold on, they just recommended a bad product before. So you just can't fake it. So it's almost like the perfect kind of marketing for the company and for the consumer, because it's like, it's not a lie, it's not fake, it's not won by the highest bidder, it's won by the best product. Yeah. So,
and you can, I think that the interesting part, like we've seen a lot of people have success with doing more creative kinds of paid promotion. Yeah. So I think that, Google and Facebook and Amazon would have you convinced that you should just programmatically spend as much money with those platforms as you possibly can. And for some products, sure, it makes sense. We've seen people go direct to, for example, a YouTube channel and say, hey, could we sponsor one of your episodes? And you don't have to have us on as the guest. You don't have to make the episode about us. But when you do your sponsorship message, right? Podcast hosts do a lot of these, YouTube hosts do a lot of these events, right? Someone from the event, the MC will go up and say, okay, we're doing a lunch. It's sponsored by so-and-so, and here's what they do. And all the event attendees are sitting in their chairs, they're at their laptops, and they're like, that sounds like a thing I'd actually be interested in. I'll go check it out, right?
Yeah.
That we've seen have way more impact than, hey, let me just go buy an influencer and have them do a 30-second video about us, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to talk about one of your posts, or a few of your posts, and some content that you've been putting out of measurement v attribution, and wanted to dive into marketing attribution really, and just if you could briefly give an overview of why you feel it's the end of attribution, and if it is dying, then what do you feel the alternative is?
Yeah, so let's see. It's a confluence of forces that's ending attribution. And just to be clear, so the difference between measurement and attribution is the ability to look at every channel you invested in that drove behavior and action from a potential customer and eventually led to a conversion or a sale.
Yeah.
And lots of digital marketers over the past 20 years have been trained to believe that they should never invest in a channel unless they can prove through attribution how and where it contributed to that sale. And I think that's just dumb. I think it's a terrible idea and doesn't work. And you're just fooling yourself. What you'll end up doing is investing in the channels that provide the most clear and direct attribution, not the ones that actually contribute to the sale. You'll almost never do any branding. You'll never do any PR. You'll never do marketing through sources of influence. You're unlikely to do any organic social media. It's getting harder and harder to justify investment in organic search. Content marketing would be straight out, to do with word of mouth or product. or pricing, like just forget it, right? Like you're going to toss all those out in favor of the channels that provide very good attribution. Those would be things like, paid search on Google, paid display and retargeting through Meta and through Facebook, through Google and through Open Web, and right, these other channels. I think that that's folly. And the reasons are basically three. One is privacy regulation, which is causing a whole bunch of data to be lost. EU, Canada, California privacy legislation, other places too. The second is what's happening, the big changes that are happening in Google Analytics and Google Chrome, right, inside of browsers and new browsers like Brave and Firefox, and the mass adoption of ad blockers and tracking blockers and cookie consent forms being declined, all that kind of stuff. And then the third is the death of cookies overall, right? So essentially, Google Chrome is phasing out cookies next year. Safari's already killed them. Firefox has already killed them. Like the technology is basically dead. And so as a result of this, what's happening is that tons of the channels and sources that drive traffic and drive behavior are now invisible. And the only ones that are visible and attributable are the ones that are paid. So unless you are a Fortune 500 who's investing hundreds of millions of dollars a year into these whatever organic and PR efforts and branding efforts, and you can build very sophisticated, high quality econometrics models that do testing in multiple geographies, you are never going to be able to attribute, hey, I went on Steve's podcast. Steve said nice things about us. And lots of people went to SparkToro and signed up for a free account and tried it.
Yeah.
I will never be able to attribute that, right? No refer string data is attached when the B2B marketing podcast, puts a link to us or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your email newsletter links to us, something like that, right? Like none of it is going to be attributable, but it is measurable. So I can see, for example, hey, a podcast that I was on, that I recorded with someone 3 weeks ago came out yesterday and they launched it. I can see them promoting it across their channels, promoting across social. And I see a little spike in visits. Maybe it's 20 or 30 or 40% more visitors than we would usually get on an average Monday are visiting SparkToro's site and signing up for a free account. So I can measure it, just can't prove that podcast sent that. Am I going to bother? Is it at all worthwhile for me to try and tag that day in my analytics and try and figure out, okay, well, what's the value of going on podcast? Or should I just forget all of that? Because if I were to build that model, it'd probably take me 50 hours, 100 hours. Maybe I'd hire a consultant, work with them. It would be an imperfect system. It wouldn't track everything. I'd spend a fortune doing it. Or should I just say yes to podcasts that look relevant?
Yeah.
Just say yes. You'll spend less time and energy saying yes and investing in those marketing channels than you will trying to measure them. And this is, I think, philosophically where a ton of digital marketers are just not there. Like they are not there. Their bosses and teams and clients are not there.
Yeah.
A lot of agencies will be like, hey, we can do this awesome marketing for you, but we won't be able to prove that it contributed to a sale. We'll be able to show measured lift over time though. And the clients, get out of here. I don't want it.
Yeah.
Prove to me that this visitor came from this source and signed up because of that thing. And they're like, okay, I guess we're going to throw more money at Google.
Yeah, exactly. It's the approach that we've been following at agency as well. Like it's just myself overseeing the marketing and the sales side of things. So it's in that aspect, it is easy for me to see what is working, what's not, and try stuff. If there's an increase in leads and it's look back a bit and it's okay, like we ran a few webinars and that's working, and you can easily see what's working. And I think certain companies will need that convincing, and certain leadership teams on the new approach. And I suppose, is there anything that you could suggest to marketing teams to convince the powers above to help them adopt this approach?
Yeah, good question. I've seen three things work. The first one is being able to show the lift after an event or a small campaign that is obviously tied to a time series event. And to do that, you need buy-in on a small investment that is experimental, right? Yeah. So you say boss, team, client, let's take 5% of our budget or 5% of our time next month, and we're going to invest in these two things that we have high confidence reach our target audience, our sources of influence for them, but are going to be very difficult for us to measure and prove the value of. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look over the 60 days following, what's the lift that we get from that, right? So we're going to do all of our normal marketing stuff, and then we're going to look and see, hey, did those have any impact? Hey, it does look like traffic is up 3 or 4%, and it looks like conversion rate's up a tenth of a percent, and it looks like, new leads is up. If we do more like that, we can expect more of that. That experimental structure can work to convince some people. The second one, show them their competition is doing it, right? Show them, be like, hey, look, here's these influential sources in our field. Here's this event, here's this conference, here's these podcasts, here's these YouTube channels, here's these social media accounts, here's these web publications, here's these email newsletters and Substacks. All of these things are contributing. They're all talking about our competition, not us. What if we got into those places? Could we potentially do better than our competition, or at least catch up to them? And a lot of, for whatever reason, a lot of clients and bosses and CMOs are driven by that competitive spirit. They will not say yes to marketing that can't be proven, but they will say yes to what they're doing it. We'll get on that. And then the third one that I've seen is to semi-cheat around this and start by doing something that is, I don't want to say provable, but you can prove some attribution, meaning you use a account code that you distribute through one of these sources of influence, or you have a special page that is for exclusively those visitors, or you do a sponsorship that gets a URL, into an email newsletter, and then you see the clicks from it, or, those kinds of things can have an impact. And then you can show a little bit more of the classic, if not attribution, at least proven visit metrics, that kind of stuff. This is a very hard challenge. I think for a ton of folks who don't believe in it, they're not going to change their mind. They'll have to be disrupted by the next generation of marketers who are savvy enough to understand this. And reality is, I think, Steve, the generations that are growing up with, especially social media influencers, the last 5 to 10 years, and probably the next 15 or 20, those folks will understand measurement, sources of influence, not attribution and provable digital marketing journeys that can be, broken up into different steps and then assigned different weights. I don't know if you saw Google Analytics, right? Said they're doing away with all the types of attribution.
Yeah.
And the only kind of attribution they'll do now is the AI powered automatic one.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't do whatever first click attribution or last click attribution. You can't do, full journey attribution. GA is no, all of that's out. You use our AI or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw you either repost that or like that the other day, and it was just, the big X's through all of the different types of attribution, and then it was just the one AI-powered one left. So, yeah.
Google just saying, trust us. We would never do anything that's not in your interest and in our interest. We're Google.
Yeah. And the bad thing is that a lot of people believe that, I feel, though. So I think that's the one benefit of having worked in SEO and all that kind of experience from the past is, anything that a company says, treat it with a pinch of salt. So,
oh man, all those years in SEO where Google's, no, we don't use that as a ranking factor. And then, some years later, there'd be some leak or something would come out, or they'd have to testify in front of Congress or whatever. And then it'd be like, hey, you did use that as a ranking factor. You were lying to us for a decade. We all believed you.
Yeah, and then it was like, no, we said we may use that. We may not use that as a rank factor. You're like, oh, okay. Sorry, we didn't read that close enough. But yeah, there we are. And I suppose the other final bit, quickly, I know we're short on time for this last bit, but was just a while back where you were mentioning about the 4 groups your content audience falls into. So the current customers, potential amplifiers, and the kind of broader community. Could you just talk quickly a bit about those and just why you feel it's important for B2B companies to be creating content, that kind of various bits of content, I suppose, that targets those different audience groups?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the best way to probably learn more about that is to go read the blog post, because I think the visuals are super helpful there.
Yeah.
If we had more time, I'd probably pull my whiteboard over and be like, here, let me show you. But the reality is that if you think about this logically, it will make complete sense, which is essentially that there are people who are your target customers, and they listen and pay attention to groups of people who are not your target customers.
Mm.
So if you are sending a marketing message and the goal is brand reach and amplification and getting distribution on social media or through PR, or getting people to write about your product, your service, your content, your report, your amplify your tweet or your LinkedIn post or your Mastodon post or whatever it is that you're doing in B2B.
Mm.
And you have exclusively targeted your marketing and your content to people who you think will be target customers, will buy your product because they read it. You're going to have a terrible time. A terrible time. I think most B2B marketers in content have a terrible time because this is all they do. They think I am supposed to reach my target customer who will buy my product after they read this piece. So I'm going to write whatever conversion focused and salesy focused content. And who the F is going to share that? Why would I ever share your salesy content on my LinkedIn, on my Twitter? Why would I email it to my friend? Why would I upvote it on, Indie Hackers or Hacker News? Why would I post it to Mastodon? Why would I share it on my Slack channel? I would never do that. I'm not going to include it in my presentation. I'm not going to talk about it at the conference. But if instead you think, wait, content reach and distribution is governed by a small percent of people and publications who are authoritative and influential in that space. And I am instead going to make content that is not salesy, that is not conversion focused, but is focused on serving that audience of influential publications and people. That's where you have a lot of success. And if you look at any of the content in the marketing world, in the world of any B2B space, you will see that the stuff that has success is the ones that serves that audience. Mm-hmm. So if you want to reach people and you want to get your brand name in front of them and you want to bring them to your website and get them to think about what your brand does, and then give your content and your copy and your website and your conversion path an opportunity to potentially turn some of those people into returning visitors and maybe buyers, you should target not your customers or your potential customers, but the people in publications who reach your customers.
Wow, mic drop. There we go. A nice thing to end on there. And the final bit, was there anything that we didn't cover today that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were going to talk about the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
If I knew that was going to happen, I'd have brought Dan on from our team, who's a massive D&D fan, and he would have chatted to you for another hour about that. So sounded like a question he's set you up to tell me to do. So, but
email me privately.
It's all good. Where can people follow along to learn more about you or learn more about SparkToro?
Yeah, so I'm Rand at SparkToro.com. That's my email. You're welcome to drop me a line. I respond to almost everything. SparkToro.com, you can try it for free if you want. There's no credit card or sign up or anything. Like lots of people, I think we have 70,000 people who just use the free account with no charge. And that's great. We love helping people for free. Yeah. It's awesome. If you want to follow along with me personally and the stuff that I share, the place where I'm most active is Mastodon, where I'm at Randfish. I have mostly stopped using Twitter because Elon
obvious reasons.
Kind of taken that to the toilet now. But I am still active on LinkedIn as well.
Nice. Perfect. Amazing. Well, appreciate your time. And thank you everyone for listening along.